Alrighty, so we're going to move along to our next segment. Everybody with me? Yeah, that's right. If you can hear my voice, clap once. All right, so our next segment, we wanted to throw this piece in because we have so many clinical trials happening and so many coming up. We thought, a patient kind of needs to know like what it's like to participate or even think about being in a clinical trial. We hear the commercials all the time about this drug in clinical trials, but who in their lifetime would ever thought they participate in a clinical trial? I know I didn't, and I'm participating in one, and I'm like, oh. So we thought it was a good segment, and you're gonna hear from people that are in clinical trials currently, or they have been in clinical trials in the last couple of years. So, of course, there's ground rules around it, right? Because when is still in study, we have to be careful to follow the rules. So we're not going to be using the name of the clinical trial. We're not going to be using the drug. It really is to understand like what it's like to participate, what it's like to even make a decision to participate in that. So I have a few people coming up today, actually 6 people, that are in all different clinical trials. And Michelle will also participate because she's in a clinical trial. I've got, first, as they come up, I'll introduce them. Ashley is the research coordinator at the Greenville, North Carolina location. So we'll be able to hear from her. This is a person that is at the site that kind of facilitates a lot of the processes. Sorry, Dr. Warren, but she does a lot of the stuff, like a lot of the things, and you'll hear from her. We also have Dr. Kohlmeyer that's going to come up and talk a little bit about being a principal investigator for that. Oh, there you are. And we have Deanne, who is a post-surgical patient. She's going to come join us. She was a placebo girl, so she's going to tell you what it's like to be a placebo. We have Jackie and Annie that are going to join us. This is a mom and daughter duo that are genetic patients, so they're going to come join us. And then we have Katie, who's our post-surgical patient on our board as well. So we're excited to have these guys, and we're just going to kind of do a chat. We're going to ask them some questions, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of time at the end to do some Q&A. But we'll let them get all settled, and I'll get settled in my seat, and we'll start to ask them some questions. We'll be right with you. All righty, let's see here. First up. All right, so I think what we will do is really, I'd like to start off with Katie. There you are. Katie has recently been in a trial for a couple years. So Katie, share with us a little bit about, like, how did you even decide? What was your journey like? How did you feel being part of that clinical trial?
Well, I'd like to say first that it was a much easier choice than it was for me getting on this chair. Because I can, so if permission to laugh if I take a tumble. But in terms of my decision to join the trial, I mean, it genuinely was very difficult. I was diagnosed with post-surgical hypopara after having thyroid cancer. And so my diagnosis came in 2019 after the second of 2 surgeries to remove my thyroid. I was 24 at the time, and I'm 29 now. And I turn 30 next month. At the time, because of my age, I had a lot of considerations. And I feel like that's something that there's some that are universal that we can all relate to, but there's some that kind of related to me specifically and that other young women can consider, right? For those of us who are considering motherhood and having kids someday, being 24 when I was diagnosed, made a difference to me. And having to think about, I think, the burdens as a whole was a big deal, right? So I was thinking about what I'm doing on standard of care and how that's affecting my life. And I was thinking about the future. So I'm holding these two things in balance and trying to make a decision about which one is worse. And I had a lot of issues after being traumatized by, first of all, having cancer, then having these 2 surgeries, and then having this rare complication happen. I had lost a lot of trust in the medical system, in my providers that I previously had. And so making the decision to trust again, to join a clinical trial with all of the risks associated was not an easy feat. And I put my poor doctor through the ringer. Man, I asked her so many questions, and I basically made her prove to me that it was worth my investment. And really what kind of caused me to get over the line of wanting to choose that for myself was my trust in her. And that really made all the difference in that decision.
All right. And share with us, because you ended up on drug from the beginning.
I did.
Okay. How did it feel like in the beginning, a couple of weeks? Were you like, what were you thinking as you went through? Because you probably had the, oh my gosh, I think I got placebo, or oh my gosh, I think I got drug. Share a little bit more about that.
I would say, I think I'm one of the lucky ones because I knew pretty immediately that I had drug. Not because I was told, not because I knew, like literally knew, but I knew because of how my body responded. And I came off of all of my calcium, vitamin D, and magnesium supplements inside of 1 month of starting the therapy. And so, I think it was just such a huge burden that was lifted, emotionally, really, and literally, because you go from taking pills multiple times a day and having to space them apart from other things that you're taking, especially if you're a thyroid patient in need of Synthroid, or if you have other issues like iron deficiency, or if you're taking PPIs, if you have GI issues, all of which I had to deal with, then just having the emotional capacity returned to you was a huge burden lifted.
Very good. Thank you. All right, Miss D. You were a placebo patient because you're an open label now, so you know that you didn't have the drug to begin with. So talk to us a little bit about what that journey was like. First of all, signing up for the clinical trial to begin with, and then what was it like when you realized you were on placebo?
Well, signing up for the trial was a no-brainer. I felt like my doctor handed me a lifeline, and I trust my doctor. He was the site director, and so, of course, I'm going in because I was so depressed. I was at my lowest level, wasn't leaving my house. I had left my job, and I've had 3 seizures, so I was afraid to leave. So this was my lifeline. I had become fearful, and I only felt safe at home. So, I jumped. And I was joking to my doctor, I don't want placebo. And I fought to get in there. I was number 2, and I'm like, ain't no way I'm getting placebo. 2 weeks, I restarted all medications. So, I tanked. And he kept, despite increasing the drug, I had to stay on all medicine. But it was no different than standard of care. And anybody that's looking for a clinical trial, I recommend it, placebo or not, because you're going to get the drug eventually.
And how do you feel now?
I'm doing better, a lot better. I'm leaving my house. Obviously, I'm here. I wouldn't have been able to come before. But I'm still adjusting. I've been on the open label, this is 6 months. My 1-year appointment is in 2 weeks, so I will sign for the extension, definitely.
Okay. Was there ever a point because you were on placebo that you were like, I can't continue?
Okay, you know that story, Patty. I blew your instant message up every day. Patty got me through this. And I think a support person for anybody that's in a trial would be phenomenal. But thank you. I wanted to quit every day, believe me. I was angry. I was angry, and it was misplaced anger. I was angry at my coordinator.
And I was not your coordinator.
But it was misplaced, and it wasn't her fault, and I know that, but I wanted to blame somebody because I didn't like her. No, it was all misplaced. I do like her. And so when I get to my 6-month mark, I'm like, I've got to turn my head around because I was still in that angry spot. Poor me, and my life sucks. So I turned it around. I had to throw a party. So I did. I threw a 3 blind mice party. And yeah, and it was fun, and the doctor appreciated it. And my blood sugar happened to drop, and I was in the 50s, and I'm like, he's like, what do I do? What do I do? I said, cake. He took the whole cake with him. So I got glucose tabs.
It was so cute, and for anybody that hasn't seen it, if you look on our Facebook online, she had a beautiful cake made that had 3 blind mice on the top of it. It was adorable, little gifts and stuff for her doctor and her.
He was really
very
enjoyed
happy.
it.
Yeah, we saw him at ASBMR, I think, or one of the conferences, and he's like, she threw me a party. And I was like, oh boy. It was amazing. It was amazing. So thank you for sharing that. I know it's a struggle to go through placebo.
But
you
it's
get your
fun. A
hopes up.
clinical trial is fun. Seriously, you're going to get better care than just going to the doctor once a year or twice a year. They're going to follow you closely. Even if you get the placebo, they're not going to let you sink. They're going to take care of you.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so.
Very good. Thank you so much. All right. So Miss Jackie is a patient in a trial as well, and also mom to Annie. So I just want to really open it up to you to just talk about your experience in a trial, and then how do you help a child decide to be in a trial? So go ahead.
So, I like to go back and forth, but as I turn. But I was fortunate economically where I was in my profession because I had to quit my job. I was able to join a phase 2 trial, which was brilliant because it was April of 2021, and my children had been home with me for a full year. And I would have done anything to leave for 10 days. So I had worked, I reached out, clinicaltrials.gov, and I had been on NatPara, and I felt great for 4 hours a day. And then when that stopped, got reminded how horrible life was, and started doing my own research. I'm a nurse. My husband's a physician, and we just started researching whatever we could. Found a trial actually at a hypopara conference in Denver. There were clinicians there that were talking about the trials and informed me of clinicaltrials.gov. I didn't know about it. And so went right on, found the trial, got enrolled, trust, had many conversations with the team, trusted them, got enrolled, did the trial, came home, felt really, really good. Had an up and down with, dosing and everything, which is a little difficult. But once you find the dose, it's great. I knew I was going to get the drug because it was a phase 2, and that was part of the trial. As for my daughter, she was too young at the time, so we actually enrolled her in a historical trial first that was non-medical, somewhat like the SHINE. So she got comfortable first with, we live in Seattle, so we were flying everywhere. Got comfortable knowing that eventually a pediatric age would occur where she could also enroll. When you start seeing your kid start to see the symptoms of what you've experienced for 40 years, it kind of hits home. And she was luckily able to see me probably at the lowest low. And then when I came home, it was like, whoa, Mom, you're upright. And why are you cleaning my bathroom? And so she was seeing the benefits that I had had. If I hadn't had the drug, we absolutely would have continued the process of trying to get her into a trial. All because of what we heard from Dr. Rubin, Dr. Kahn. You don't want your kid to suffer. You want to optimize their life, and you want to see them succeed. So that was kind of the background as to why support was huge. I think for you, having the trust in the trial team was very important to talk to them at a, you're 17, right? At a 17-year-old level was very important for us to be able to, hey, you gotta talk to a kid. A very mature child, but you need to understand, coming from what the doctor is saying, we can translate it for you, but you have to understand yourself what you're getting into.
Very good. Thank you so much. And Annie is a very mature child, and she participated in our ELPFDD this year as well, and did an incredible job. So Annie, talk to us a little bit about how like when you got the opportunity, what did that feel like? And then being in high school, how did you talk to your friends, and like what did all that feel like? So just share with us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when I got the opportunity to join a trial, I immediately said yes because what I saw my mom experience, and I knew that I was like getting more symptoms, and I didn't want to like continue standard of care because of my kidneys, so I wanted to get on a drug that would like help save me and prevent future damage. So that was like an easy yes, and like the historical trial definitely helped like gain my comfortability to like to all the doctors in the trial team, and so that was very helpful. And then like being in a trial in high school is very time consuming, and it's a commitment that you have to make, but it has like very many benefits that are like useful in the real world, like outside of the medical world too. So I'm very grateful that I've like gained these experiences and these like qualities that I can use outside. And like communication skills, like I've had to communicate with my teachers and different medical providers to like convey my message well. And like talking to teachers, like I've had to like ask for work early or like be prepared more, and like just tell them that, hey, I'm gonna be absent from school pretty frequently this year. Like I'm gonna be gone every week, so I need this work now. Like give it to me, please. And it's for a valid reason. Like I'm not just skipping school. And some teachers like don't understand, but others do, and it's like it's really nice when like people understand and they try to help you with it. And yeah, like I've gained so much confidence through the trial too, like talking with medical providers and like actually being able to tell them how I feel, and not just like, oh yeah, I'm good, like I'm okay today, like it's okay, but actually saying like I'm not okay and I'm actually like I need help. So that confidence has like grown my personality too, and like helped me be less I'm like twisting around. But yeah, that confidence has like definitely helped me in the real world, and like getting a job too, and like talking to my boss and talking to different like people in charge of me. And so it's been really helpful, and I would definitely do it again if I had the choice to do it again, I guess.
Do you feel like you've missed out on anything as you've gone through this in your adolescent years?
I would say I have missed out on stuff. I'm a student athlete, and so like being involved in sports is kind of hard to do while in a trial, but it's doable, and you just have to like communicate with people and your coach. But I've definitely missed practices and like not like be able to play in the game the next day because I missed the practice before, or I haven't had enough practices to play in the game. So that's been kind of hard and confusing because like the trial is an important thing and it's a valid reason to miss practice, but the coach just doesn't understand. But yeah, so just like communicating with my coach and like, I don't know, just telling people that, hey, I'm not just skipping this, like it's for a good reason and I know I'm gonna miss out on stuff, but it's not just for me, it's for like the whole hypoparathyroid like community and like that's the reason why I do it and I still do it because it's not just for me, it's for everyone.
Oh my goodness. We'll give these guys a chance to sum up at the end if they have anything additional to say, but I want to switch gears a little bit over to our medical community, and I'm going to start with Ashley. As the research coordinator, you guys have done all the hypopara trials, and you do all kinds of other trials, weight loss, and anything endocrinology, you've done like all of them. So talk to us a little bit about like what a patient should think about before they consider entering into a trial.
I think it's important to consider having support, making sure that your family understands why you're participating, understanding side effects that we could see, understanding the time commitment that is required to participate, what the visit entails. If you are scared of lab draws or injections, then there may be things that are not the best option for you as a patient if you can't endure those things. Being prepared for getting placebo and having a plan if you were to get placebo and having open communication with your site and feeling comfortable enough to know that you are in a place where you're going to be comfortable.
Very good, thank you. And then, so the sponsors of the trial are the people that actually make, or the drug company, and then there's a company that kind of facilitates the trial behind the scenes to keep things blinded and all the regulations. Can you talk a little bit more about like how that is and like the blinding and the double blinding so that we can understand? I mean, you hear, oh, we're in a double blinded trial on the TV, but what does it really mean?
So I would say you have the sponsor who's paying for the trial, then you have like your CRO who's the one that you're getting to do the blind, like to keep the information that you're going to report to the FDA. So they have systems that they use that are computerized, and the medication it comes like in a box, and the syringes are in the box or in a vial or pills, whichever trial you're on. But those numbers come in, and we don't know if they are the real deal or placebo. They are all kept the same way. So like if it's all refrigerated, then it all goes in the refrigerator. When you sign the consent and you're okay to randomize, once you're randomized, we get a lot number. We pull that lot number and verify it, and that's what we give. And so there's no way for us to know what you're getting, and we don't have any control over that. And so it's all automated and computerized.
Mm-hmm. And you used the word randomized, and another word is optimized. Can you share with the patients like when you're talking optimized, what does that mean? And when you're talking randomized, what does that mean? Because that's for every trial as well.
So optimization is a period that the specific study has lab values that have to be a certain number. And so each protocol will have different things that they allow, how many times we can change your medication from the time you screen. So most of the time you see optimization, you screen for the study, they give us so many weeks to get you optimized, but they also require like so many days from the time a medication is changed to when we can recheck your labs. So once you're optimized, you get your labs all in that protocol requirement, then you would be able to randomize once you had met all of those inclusion criteria. And randomization means that you are put into the system and you're going to get a medication, placebo, or the real deal.
All right, very good. And I know you have a lot of paperwork. I've seen those binders before. I'm like, holy cow. So there's a lot of policy adherence that you have to do to that. Talk about what protocol means when you share with the patient, well, this is protocol. What does that mean?
So, once the consent is given to the patient, and a lot of times, especially in this community, the patients have already dug in to see what the studies involves. But the protocol is literally, we call it the Bible, and we say that this is exactly how you're supposed to run it. And they do that so that they can get compliance as well as keeping things the same throughout all the sites. So when you're talking about the paperwork, some sites use EMR, some sites use paper, and so that would be why you would see a paper binder. That, like our site, we use paper, so all of your medical records are printed and placed into like a 3-ring notebook binder.
And how does safety and protocol kind of go together for the patient experience? Because, as you go through a trial, people can get a little bit scared if they're on placebo or, they went too high because they're on product. Talk about a little bit about the safety and the compliance of the protocol, if you have any thoughts.
So we tell our patients safety always comes first. That doesn't mean we break the rules just because you want to break the rules. We try to abide by the protocol, but we also want to make sure that the patient's safety is kept first. And so ultimately, your investigator has the ability to use their judgment, and if your labs are off, then they make the call as to, and we do reach out, like they've got medical directors on the CRO side that we can reach out to and say, this is what's going on with the patient. And they'll ask Dr. Warren, what do you want to do? What do you feel like? And they'll communicate back and forth as to certain situations that may not be clear in the protocol.
And then going back to the patient experience, talk a little bit about commitment and really how do you talk to people in the beginning and then how do you kind of coach them through, if they may be doubting as they're in there.
So understanding in some of the most recent trials, when they've come out, they have not had necessarily, we know open label is coming, but it's not been finalized. But we try to talk to the patients about making sure that, the first 6 months is blinded and we don't know if you're going to get drug or placebo, trying to make sure that we are setting them up in the right manner to support them so that they understand that there's going to be a blinded portion. We have to have both sides. We need data from both sides. Both of those points are extremely important to be able to show that the medication efficacy is there. And if we don't have that, then we risk a trial. And there's been trials that have been done that we're not able to show the efficacy because of dropouts. And so it's important to make sure that you're talking about, you've got the blinded portion, but after the blinded portion, so right now you're on standard of care, and you'll continue that. If you get drug, then you'll be able to come off your standard of care. But at 6 months when you finish, you're going to get drug. And so I'll be your cheerleader in the meantime to make sure that we get through, and I'll help mitigate if there's questions or concerns or, our patients, if you want labs, have labs. If that's what you need, then we're going to do what we can to make sure that you feel as comfortable as possible.
And it's been mentioned in here several times by the different doctors about not changing doses for 7 days. And for a patient, a hypopara, you're either high or you're really low and you're like, oh my God, 7 days, how do I make it through 7 days? But do you have any insights on why you feel that's important to wait the 7 days?
Well, I think that especially when you're titrating up on a medication and titrating down off a standard of care, it takes time. And so the providers can go into detail, what specific labs are we, if we're looking at calcium and your albumin to get your adjusted calcium, then those things, if we've reduced your standard of care and your drug has stayed the same, then rechecking in 2 or 3 days to see where you are, that may be appropriate. But we can't titrate up on the medication because you're not going to see that effects with the medication's half-life. You may not have had enough time. So in checking too early, it may cause more harm psychologically by numbers aren't going up. And it may not have been that you've had enough time for those labs to reflect that.
Right, very good, thank you. All right, I'll take you off the hot seat for a minute and go over here to Dr. Kohlmeyer. So you are what they call a PI, and if you want to just kind of explain really your role in clinical trials, because you've done several. So talk to us a little bit about your role and your experience and kind of how you coach your patients.
Wow, well, I have to say, being up here with you guys, I mean, it has made this whole meeting. You've said it all. It's going to be hard to follow. It's just so great. And I know we've got a lot of you out there that could be up here too, maybe next year. I mean, it just so impactful. I think Dr. Warren and Kahn, and there may be some other PIs or sub-Is in the audience. I don't see anybody now. But, you know, our role is to recruit people and to recruit our patients, to recruit our colleagues' patients, and to do all the things that Ashley and you guys have said to reassure people about our belief in the safety of the trial and, you know, not be too enthusiastic, but be honest and to know that, you know, it's not just for them, but it's for the community, like you said, and to just keep supporting them, encouraging the participants to have a navigator. And that's something else that I think we can do with our HPA support is to maybe help with that, because it doesn't have to be somebody right next door. It could be a virtual navigator, really. And then for these trials with hypoparathyroidism, it is so much more time-consuming than almost any other trial. And you guys know this because, so both for us as the PI or sub-I, but also for the participants, it's lots of labs and lots of adjustments. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that. So as a participant, you want to make sure you're going to make the commitment. And that placebo effect, everywhere else in life, which is 30 to 40%, right? You believe in something, and it's good to have that positive attitude. In hypoparathyroidism too, but placebo doesn't work in hypoparathyroidism. It's a 3% placebo effect. I've never seen such a low placebo effect in any other condition ever. And we usually think as investigators and participants that we know when somebody's on drug right away, but I've been fooled. And is that because they have partial hypoparathyroidism? Yes. Is that because they tolerate, I'm going to say, too low of a calcium because I'm panicking and they're calling going, why are you worried? I'm fine. You know, because that's why when Dr. Kahn presented the data, one of the reasons why some of the urine parameters improved is because the patients were able to get on a lower dose of active D and calcium, not because they should have been there anyway, but because they tolerated it and it was better for their kidney, but maybe not better for them trying to be active or exercise, right? But I didn't understand that when I first looked at the controls. How could that be? So, and getting really excited when I feel and agree with patients when they're on the drug. I mean, within hours, some of our patients can tell. And I'm like, I'm always a skeptic. In endocrine, we're kind of, you know, we don't believe anything over the counter except for calcium and vitamin D. And, you know, we need these placebo blinded trials to prove to us the safety and the long-term efficacy. Otherwise, you're going to just believe everything over the counter that might not even be in what you buy. So I think, you know, trusting how my patients are excited about being on drug and then supporting the patients that are on placebo. And we're all, you know, praying together. And, you know, some trials are 3-to-1 randomization, some are 2-to-1. But my patients on placebo, they're just amazingly strong. And they're like, I'm in this for everybody. And my 6 months, you know, they're counting down the hours. And it's just so fantastic. And then the other thing, which was really important about Dr. Shobak's comorbidity talk, was there a lot of other things happened too. And you're always trying to differentiate. Is it related to the trial? Is it not? And so I'm getting, Dr. Warren and Dr. Khan and I are getting all the calls, somebody needs steroids for bronchitis or somebody needs this. And of course, your safety comes first. They don't want to get kicked out of the trial. Like, no, what you need is important. But, if you have tennis elbow and they're going to give you an injection of steroid, I'm going to say no matter what to that. I mean, do everything else. Stop playing pickleball for a little bit. Put ice on your, don't get steroids if you don't need them. But on the other hand, they're life-saving. So I think that our involvement is really important, and it's an honor, but all the work, and I think Dr. Khan and Dr. Warren would agree, really goes to the coordinators and the research team. I mean, there's so much work to these types of trials, so we couldn't do it without everybody.
All right, thank you. And so many rules and regulations that you have to stick by. And it's hard because you have a patient's life and their emotions, but you have to stick to some of the rules to make it. So when we go to FDA and say, this is why we need this drug, it works. So, all right, so I'm going to turn over here to Michelle and ask her, because she also participated in a clinical trial. Share with us a little bit about how it went for you, and, well, we all know how it went for you, but like how some different things throughout that you want to make sure that everybody knows.
Okay, what I want to share is things that so for me, my drug is working fantastically, and I was one of those patients who I knew within the first 2 weeks, and Dr. Kohlmeyer asked me to share this, is that, so I got my drug for the first time on May 17th, and my 25th wedding anniversary was on May 25th. And before I knew I was going to ever enter a trial, before I ever knew whether or not I was going to get drug or when I was going to get it, I had made plans for my 25th wedding anniversary to go to Alaska for the first time. And just a quick little tidbit that my husband and I were high school sweethearts. I was diagnosed after we got married. So he knew me before I was diagnosed. He knew me after I was diagnosed. But we made these plans with him knowing full well I did not expect to be able to do anything when I got to Alaska. So I took my first injection 2 weeks before going, and I got on that trip, and he said, oh, I would love to go on that ATV ride, but I know you can't do it. And I said, I think I want to try. And I did it. And then on the way back from the ATV ride, he was like, do you think you could handle a 1 mile walk to the glacier? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try. I just had this newfound, and maybe, it was partially a placebo effect. I had this newfound confidence, but I did it and I didn't crash. And that was the first time in 20 years that I didn't crash. And I knew in that moment that I was on drug, and I actually went back because, in the beginning, that first month, you have to go very frequently for labs. And I had to actually get special permission to go on the trip because of the frequent labs. And I went back to my site coordinator and said, I got drug. She goes, you can't know that. I said, I got drug. I'm telling you right now, I got drug. I just knew. But what I also really want to share is, as a board member of the Hypopara Association, I think it's important because what I see from all the patients we talk to on a frequent basis about how do you make that decision, I jumped in feet first just because that's who I am. And I didn't stop to think about what kind of time commitment it was. And I admit, I went to those optimization things and didn't even ask, when is my next appointment? I just knew whatever they asked of me, I was going to do it. But for someone who's not in my position and doesn't have flexibility of work or doesn't have financial capabilities, I look back now and go, I should have asked, is this going to cost me anything? How many days a week am I going to have to take off of work? How long is this going to last? And then calculate out, what does 26 weeks look like? And how is this going to affect my husband? How is this going to affect my children? And how much time I have to give up with them as I travel for several days to do the 24-hour urine, to do this, to do that. Those questions, think about them. I'm not saying you shouldn't do the trial, But if you don't have the capacity in your life to take the time off of work, these things are very, very important. But I also want to speak a little bit to about being in a placebo as a hypopara patient. Now, I was lucky enough not to be, but I didn't even think about that aspect before I jumped. But I want you to encourage you to remember that don't be afraid of placebo, because realistically, your life should be no different than it was on standard of care. You're still just going to be on standard of care for that 6 months. And while it's scary and it's disappointing, remember, like Ashley said, your life is going to be so drastically different potentially. We can't make any promises about these drugs, but potentially your life is going to be different in 6 months. So I just want to encourage people.
Can I add one thing about encouraging people to be in trials? I've had a few patients who are on Natpara, like many of you, and when it was taken away or they couldn't get into the program where you can continue it, one patient told me, and she's one of my older patients, she's got all these grandchildren, she's traveling all around with them, she camps. She goes, I felt like an addict. And, she doesn't even drink anyway, you know what I mean? She has none of that tendency. And she goes, I felt like off of Natpara that something had been taken away from me. And she was so mad and so upset. She goes, you're not going to talk me into that ever again. She's in a trial and she's doing great. So it took, she trusted me, but it took a while. And I think one of the clues was for her family, So, she was doing okay. Of course, not okay. What is that word? On conventional treatment. But when I started talking about, look at all these trips you want to be able to keep doing and your grandkids, and she was there.
Very good. All right, so Bob, do you have a microphone back there? So let's take one or two, and then I want to give them 1 minute to, anybody have any questions in the audience? Right here.
Thank you so much for your courage and altruism and beneficence. I was wondering what advice you might have for people who are designing and orchestrating these studies. I know, for example, Ashley told me don't cheap out on the concierge service. Get a good one.
Yes.
That'll help patients with their travel and arrangements and hotels and things. But I was wondering what guidance you might have or advice.
I've got some. I'm very opinionated, but and it's a very difficult thing, especially for trials because of HIPAA. But for sites to be able to put together, and you sign the paperwork, to contact other patients going through this, especially kids who have never met anybody in their entire life with this condition, is so important. There's Facebook groups now, but to be able to travel through this journey with somebody that's going through it, whatever the paperwork is, whatever the legal stuff is, it needs to get done before that first patient starts. Would be my first thing.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I was in a clinical trial, and when she said that you needed somebody else, there was another lady there. We asked permission to meet each other, and it was granted. We were allowed to talk to each other because we happened to just go in on the same day. So we were allowed to talk to each other. They just gave us permission and gave the study permission. We couldn't give our names to, the confidentiality part, but it was really nice. And now we stay on Facebook and we tell each other how we're doing, what we would have done differently. And so I think that you're right on that, especially I imagine with kids, to just be able to say, yes, this is good, and no, this isn't good.
I have some other recommendations. The diaries, I'm told, are very tedious. And if they could be better, I wish there was more collection of calcium in the diet diary,
Yeah.
you know, and activity, exercise. You know, I've got patients that are athletes, and they're hiking and competing now, and I have other patients that are doing great, and, you know, just going for a walk is good, but we know that exercise and activity uses up our calcium, and I want that to be calculated and considered in the trial.
Okay, very good. All right, so we only have about 5 minutes left, so I wanted to give our patients an opportunity for any last minute closing statement. So Katie, you want to start?
Thank you, Patty. Yeah, I have something that I thought of specifically when Dr. Kohlmeyer was speaking about that doctor-patient investment as it relates to like that very important relationship. And I was thinking that this is probably something that we all experience as hypopara patients and maybe our caregivers that watch us go through it. But I myself had gotten very used to feeling like a burden. That was a word that I feel like kind of lives in this disease a lot for us, both because the disease is burdening us, and then because it's burdening us, then we are sometimes made to feel like we are burdening the medical system or burdening our providers with the needs that we have, none of which is our fault. And I very specifically remember the time when that was alleviated for me was the very moment that I walked down the hall side by side with my PI, my clinical trial doctor, and I walked towards the room where I would be taking my first injection in this trial. And it was like walking into my future. That's how it felt, like walking into the future. And I've never looked back from that. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for everyone who has been a part of that. There were a lot of people that personally brought me to that point, the loving support of my boyfriend, my family, and friends, and my doctor. And I wouldn't be in that position without her, and with all the other support that I had. And it's just so important, as many of us have referenced, having that community of support. And I just want to say too, I hope that for our newly diagnosed patients and for returning patients and caregivers that you've all found that here.
Thank you. Annie?
I just want to like put it out there that you can do this, and even if you're having doubts, like you can do it, and like if I can do it, you can do it. Like it's
That's great.
I'm pretty young and I started when I was 16, but I still did it. So
Very good. Thank you. Jackie?
I think being active in the Hypopara Association in general is important. Whether you're in a trial or not, it gets you motivated, it gives you a purpose, you get networked. This conference in 2019, when I attended it, honestly changed. I thought I was out there by myself. Even though I had a phenomenal support group of friends and family. But having friendships, we meet people online, to actually come in person gave me confidence in the trials in general, so.
Very good. Thank you. Any last words?
I don't regret it. Even though I got the placebo, I don't regret it. I like to joke that the placebo primed my receptors. I don't cry every day anymore. I might cry once a month. So, I mean, you're right, Dr. Khan. It's a PTH disease. You're all right. It's a PTH disease. The calcium, it doesn't help. But I do feel like an addict because I keep calling my doctor. Can I have some more? Can I have some more? This feels good. Can I have more?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's great. All right, so we are out of time for now, but these guys will be out there during lunch, and you can certainly, pick their brains as we go through it. But thank you all for your participation in the trials and in the community. We appreciate you. We're going to take lunch right now.